Hi, I'm author and speaker Robin Mead. This video is Dealing with Difficult People, Part 2, and is based on the example of Daniel. You can find this video and my other teaching videos on my YouTube channel. You can find my YouTube channel by going to youtube.com/RobinMeadAuthor, and please subscribe so you'll be notified the next time a teaching video comes out. My book, Fierce Wholeness, is available on Amazon in either paperback, Kindle, or Audible formats. So this teaching is based on the concepts found in the book of Daniel, chapters 2 through 4. So just a recap from part 1, the Israelites have gone through many generations of being disobedient to God, and God gave them plenty of notice through the prophets, Isaiah, Jeremiah, and many others, that punishment was coming. And so God allowed Judah, the southern kingdom, to be overtaken by Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon. And as part of that conquest, Nebuchadnezzar ordered that the cream of the crop of the royal family and nobility in Judah be brought back to Babylon, and be trained in the way of the Chaldeans to serve Nebuchadnezzar in his kingdom. And Daniel and his friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, were in this group. So in part 1, I talked from Daniel chapter 1, about how Daniel starts right out asserting a boundary with the person in charge of him and his friends based upon what they knew to be right in their faith walk with God. And so in Daniel 2 now, we're introduced to King Nebuchadnezzar directly. In chapter 1, they talked about him, but they didn't interact with him. But in chapter 2, here we are. So let's read. We're in Daniel chapter 2, verses 1 through 16. So in the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams. His spirit was troubled, and his sleep left him. The king commanded that the magicians, the enchanters, the sorcerers, and the Chaldeans be summoned to tell the king his dreams. So they came in and stood before the king, and the king said to them, "I had a dream, and my spirit is troubled to know the dream." Then the Chaldeans said to the king in Aramaic, "O king, live forever. Tell your servants the dream, and we will show for the interpretation." The king answered and said to the Chaldeans, "The word from me is firm. If you do not make known to me the dream and its interpretation, you shall be torn limb from limb, and your houses shall be laid in ruins. But if you show the dream and its interpretation, you shall receive from me gifts and rewards and a great honor. Therefore, show me the dream and its interpretation." They answered a second time and said, "Let the king tell his servants the dream, and we will show you its interpretation." The king answered and said, "I know with certainty that you are trying to gain time, because you see the word from me is firm. If you do not make the dream known to me, there is but one sentence for you. You have agreed to speak lying and corrupt words before me till the times change. Therefore, tell me the dream, and I shall know that you can show me its interpretation." The Chaldeans answered the king and said, "There is not a man on earth who can meet the king's demand, for no great and powerful king has asked such a difficult thing of a magician or any enchanter or Chaldean. The thing that the king asks is difficult, and no one can show it to the king except the gods, whose dwelling is not with flesh." Because of this, the king was angry and very furious, and commanded that all the wise men of Babylon be destroyed. So the decree went out, and the wise men were about to be killed, and they sought Daniel and his companions to kill them. Then Daniel replied with prudence and discretion to Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, who had gone out to kill the wise men of Babylon. He declared to Arioch, the king's captain, "Why is the decree of the king so urgent?" Then Arioch made the matter known to Daniel, and Daniel went in and requested the king to appoint him a time that he might show the interpretation to the king. Holy moly. So what is with this king? The demand he made is crazy. Tell me what I dreamed, and then if you don't, I'm going to kill you. And you have to tell me what I dreamed, because if I tell you the dream, I know you'll lie to me and interpret the dream the way you want to. Wow. Okay, so last time in part 1, we read how Daniel and his friends were found to be 10 times better than all of the other wise men in the kingdom, and yet their lives are clearly expendable to this king as well. Clearly, Nebuchadnezzar felt everyone could be replaced regardless of value at one point in time. So I just want to ask you here, have you ever felt your worth suffer in your job or maybe your family? And what did you do? How did you respond? I know if somebody told me that I needed to tell me their dream and then interpret it, I would be like, what? What are you talking about? It's surreal. It's not reasonable. But Daniel approaches this situation by stepping out in faith. So let's read a little further in verses 17 through 19. Then Daniel went to his house and made the matter known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions, and told them to seek mercy from the God of heaven concerning this mystery, so that Daniel and his companions might not be destroyed with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. Then the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a vision of the night. Then Daniel blessed the God of heaven. Okay, so let's learn some lessons from this. Number one, so during lesson 1, we talked about how Daniel and his friends are somewhere in their mid-teens, and this is just a couple of years later. And so here they are, they're still probably in their late teens or early 20s, and here they're able to take this stand. Daniel's able to step out like this. So faith is not dependent on age, but on obedience. Number 1. Number 2, Daniel went to his support group for prayer. So the first thing he did was give a prudent answer to Arioch, and then he went straight to his support group for prayer because he knows he doesn't have that answer, but he knows who God is and that he has an answer. And what happened? Well, God answered. And what is the first thing that Daniel does when God answers? Verses 20-23 are this song of praise that Daniel sings to the Lord. That's the first reaction he has, is to praise God about what's going on. Now, after that, after God answers Daniel's prayer and Daniel praises him, then Daniel follows up right away with the head of the guard, Arioch. So here we are in verses 24-28. So therefore Daniel went to Arioch, whom the king had appointed to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He went and said thus to him, do not destroy the wise men of Babylon. Bring me in before the king, and I will show the king the interpretation. Then Arioch brought in Daniel before the king in haste, and thus said to him, I have found among the exiles from Judah a man who will make known to the king the interpretation. The king declared to Daniel, whose name was Belshazzar, that's his Chaldean name, are you able to make known to me the dream that I have seen and its interpretation? Daniel answered the king and said, no wise men, enchanters, magicians, or astrologers can show the king the mystery that the king has asked. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries, and he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will be in the latter days. Your dream and the visions of your head as you lay in bed are these. So then notice Daniel goes boldly without delay. So it's no small thing to go before the king and to ask for an audience with the king. You know, like if he blows this, he's dead for sure, and probably his friends too. But his confidence comes from his relationship with God. And notice the first thing that Daniel does is goes to Arioch, and he secures the safety for all the wise men by doing this. So he looks out for others as well as himself and his friends. So then when he starts to talk to the king, he makes it clear to the king that the king said, are you able to do this? And the king's like, yeah, nobody can do this, but God can do it. So he's giving appropriate acknowledgement of the God who has provided this interpretation, also the knowledge of the dream and the interpretation to Daniel. And only the God of the Israelites is able to do this. So in this way, Daniel is very careful not to reduce his fellow wise men. He doesn't say, yeah, I'm able to do it and those other guys couldn't. So he doesn't bash them or anything. He says, hey, nobody can do this, but there's a God in heaven who does it. And then Daniel goes ahead and tells the king his dream, and he interpreted for him in detail in verses 46 through 47. Then the king, this pagan king, offers sacrifices to Daniel's God, the God of Israel. So in verses 48 and 49, Daniel is blessed for his faithfulness with a promotion and also asks for his friends to be given positions of authority. So let this be a lesson to you, because when we go to chapter 3, we have another crazy interaction with King Nebuchadnezzar. And I did a teaching on this last year where Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael are thrown into a fiery furnace. You may have heard their Chaldean names, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And they also respond to this king in confidence and they're about the same age. This isn't much longer after Daniel interprets this dream and he gets all these accolades and all these rewards, along with his friends, and here his friends again, their lives are at stake, because this guy is crazy. He's just crazy. But they are also able to answer this king with confidence because of their confidence in God. So by the time we get to chapter 4 of Daniel, God deals with Nebuchadnezzar in a final way, taking away his mental capacity for 7 years until he acknowledges that God is God, the Alpha and the Omega. God is God of gods and King of kings, Lord of kings. Remember, in your situation with your crazy person that you have difficulty communicating with, that God is sovereign and you can trust him in every single situation. I hope this helps you reach your next level of fierce with Jesus. God bless.